Welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation, where we are gathering this morning, both virtually and in person, as one connected community. I am Jan Berger-Cohn, she, her, your worship leader for this morning's service. If you are a visitor online and would like Northwest to stay in touch with you, please fill out the visitor form appearing in the chat box. If you are with us in person, you can fill out the visitor sign-in form in the atrium. Please greet your neighbors with a wave from wherever you are. We are delighted to welcome the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Landrum this morning. Reverend Cindy is the minister at the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, Massachusetts. She has previously served churches in Clark Lake, Michigan, Gardner, Massachusetts, and Houston, Texas. She is known in Unitarian Universalism for her Facebook group leadership, Zentelling, love of science fiction, and her fat liberation leadership. We have a few announcements to share with you. You'll find more information about Northwest and its events in the weekly newsletter and on our website. First, climate conversations. Pastor Eli would like to invite you all to 2 sessions of climate conversations with him and Interfaith Power and Light. These sessions are conversations to explore a framework for planning faithful, transformative action for climate justice. We have secured a small grant from Interfaith Power and Light to do this work. The first session will be March 17th at 12:30 at First UU Detroit. And the second session will be here April 14th, 12:30 p.m. Lunch will be provided at both sessions. Look for a link to RSVP in an upcoming email or see Pastor Eli for more details. Secondly, Canvas reminder. So I have some new updates. Since we raised $80,000 and 30% of our total budget, you might have seen that already, but we have now, I'm happy to say, total pledges totaling $134,600 added on. That's 50% of our goal. So wonderful. We have 2 new pledges, and we have between the increases and the new pledges, $7,642 towards the matching grant, and we still have $7,358 to match with the matching grant. So your money can go further if you increase or if you are a new pledger. As you think about how much you can commit to Northwest this year, please consider increasing your pledge as per this. You will be having an even greater impact because of an anonymous member of the congregation who wants to invest deeply in Northwest's future this year and has offered to match the first $15,000 of new pledge money. Once again, that's increases or new pledges, so please think about that. We still have folks available after the service to help you fill out your pledge forms online. Thank you for your generosity and commitment to financially support the mission of Northwest. Okay, so for joys and sorrows, please think about this. There will be a community conversation about joys and sorrows held on Zoom Wednesday, March 27th at 7 p.m. The Zoom link will be posted and sent out in this week's newsletter and can be obtained by emailing Reverend Julie. Before we begin the prelude, let's all take a deep breath and settle into a time of worship. And the prelude is Field John of Dreams by Bill Caddies, instrumental by Nancy Landon on accordion, and Adarsha Antares on violin. And we're waiting for the blue light in the back. There it goes. That was lovely. We begin our worship service with a land acknowledgement. We honor and pay our respects to the land on which we live and work, which was violently stolen through colonialism, genocide, and forced removal of its traditional stewards. These stewards are the Ashen Sinabak, the Council of Three Fires, which include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi, also known as the Ottawa, Chippewa, and Potawatomi tribes. We also acknowledge the people of African descent who were forcibly removed from their land and separated from their families through kidnapping and enslavement, and pay reverence and respect to them for building this country's infrastructure and economy with no compensation or reparations to date. Now it's time to light the chalice. We light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, knowing this morning that many other Unitarian Universalist congregations across this land and around the world are doing the same. We light the chalice with words from the Reverend Molly Brewer.
We spend our lives being told, in so many little ways, and some big ones too, that the only way to be healthy, to be whole, to be holy, is to be small, to shrink ourselves through sweat or surgery or starvation, to contain our essence in an assigned shape. But the flame that casts a light is no more or less holy, whether it's small, illuminating this intimate space, or a blaze that lights up the whole room. May the flame of the chalice we light today remind each of us, big or small, that we are healthy, holy, and whole right now.
Now we are going to sing and hopefully have you join us in singing the Irish Blessing. Julie, Stitt, and Adarsha and I will help you along.
So we have an Irish blessing, obviously it's St. Patty's Day, and Jan chose this beautiful song. And if you choose to join in, you may. So we're going to sing it 2 times through in unison, and then we'll break into a round. And if you choose to, feel free to join us. And the words, I hope, will be up on the screen for you. Do we have words up on the other? Yeah. May
troubles be less and blessings be more. May nothing but happiness come to your door. And may you have luck wherever you go. Your blessings outnumber the shamrocks that grow. May winds be at your back and sun be overhead. May friends be at your side wherever you are led. May troubles be less and blessings be more. May nothing but happiness come to your door. And may you have luck wherever you go. Your blessings outnumber the shamrocks that grow. May winds be at your back and sun be overhead. May friends be at your side wherever you are led. May troubles be less and blessings be more. May nothing but happiness come to your door. And may you have luck wherever you go. Your blessings outnumber the shamrocks that grow. May troubles be at your back and sun be over.
Happy St. Pat's, everyone. Our story for all ages today is this book, Big Mama Makes the World, by Phyllis Root, illustrated by Helen Oxenbury. When Big Mama made the world, she did not mess around. There was water everywhere, and Big Mama saw what was needed to be done all right. So she rolled up her sleeves and went to it. Wasn't easy either with that little baby sitting on her hip. Didn't stop Big Mama though, not for a minute. Light, said Big Mama, and you'd better believe there was light. Dark, said Big Mama, and there was the dark just as big as the light. You two got work to do, Big Mama said. Don't you be fooling around none. Then she looked at the light, and she looked at the dark, and she looked at that little baby, and smiling and cooing, and Big Mama said, that's good. That's real good. And that's how the first day went by. Next day, Big Mama looked around and said, can't tell my up from my down. Better have some sky here. And there was. One big sky wrapping over everything soft and blue as a baby's blanket. Wasn't much else yet, but water and light and dark and sky, all doing what Big Mama wanted them to. And Big Mama, she was pleased all right. That's good, she said, that's real good. And that's how the second day went by. Next day, Big Mama looked around some more and she said, got me some light, got me some dark, but I still can't tell what time of day it is. How am I gonna know when it's morning or evening or time to put the baby down for a nap? And she wanted to know all right. And what she wants, she gets. That's just how it goes. Sun, said Big Mama, you take care of this day business for me. Moon, said Big Mama, you take care of the night. And Big Mama made the stars too, just in case the moon slept overtime. And she looked at the sun and the moon and the stars filling up her sky, just in time for the little baby's nap. And she nodded and smiled and said, that's good. That's real good. And that's how the third day went by. And the next morning, Big Mama got up with the sun and she said, I need a place to put my feet down when they need putting down. And she knew there'd be some foot putting down when that baby of hers got to growing more. Earth, said Big Mama, get over here. And it did. All one big ball of mud it was and nothing much to look at. And baby liked it just right the way it was. But Big Mama wasn't finished yet. Need some grass to wriggle my toes in, said Big Mama. Some old big shade trees for hanging a hammock, papayas and oranges and boysenberries for eating on. And that's how it was then, just like Big Mama said. Little baby sucking on a mango and grass and trees and fruit all over the place, like somebody chipped over a fruit stand. And Big Mama, she looked at all that earth and she said, good, that's real good. And that's how the fourth day went by. Lots of folks would be plenty pleased, but Big Mama, she doesn't quit. And she looked at the earth and the water and the skies and tree and sun and moon and stars, and she said, awful quiet down there. Better have some whales. Better have some birds. Better have some fish. And that's exactly what happened, all right. Pretty soon there were whales and catfish, mockingbirds, crows, more than the little baby could shake a stick at, if a baby wanted to, since Big Mama had already made all those trees full of sticks. Big Mama looked down at all that action and she said, that's real good. And that's how the fifth day went by. Big Mama was about ready to be done with it all. Making the world is a lot of work with all that laundry piling up and dishes that need doing. And she figured she'd better finish things off in one big bang. I need me some creepers and crawlers, Big Mama said, some runners and jumpers, diggers and divers. Everybody else wants to get created. Here's your chance. Hedgehogs and night crawlers, raccoons and garter snakes, rabbits, polar bears. That's how Big Mama made them all one big bang. But Big Mama was not done. Oh no. I'm lonely, said Big Mama. Who's gonna sit on the front porch and swap stories with me? Not these creepers and crawlers, they're good all right, but not one of them can tell a story. And all this baby can say is goo goo gaga. I need some folks to keep me company. So Big Mama, she scooped up some of that leftover mud and she pushed and she pulled, and the next thing you knew, there were folks everywhere. Big folks, little folks, fat folks, thin folks, all kinds of shades of folks. And every one of those folks had a story to swap with Big Mama. That's good, said Big Mama. And that's how the 6th day went by, with Big Mama and all those folks sitting on the porch and gabbing while the sun went down. Big Mama was ready to rest for a night, ready to bundle up with that little baby of hers in that big blue blanket of sky. But Big Mama had one more thing to do. She lined up all those folks and she said, "This is a real nice world we got here, and you all better take some good care of it. I'm taking a day off to rest now, but I'll be keeping an eye on you." And that's what Big Mama said, all right, and you better believe she meant it. Every once in a while, while she's burping that baby, or making cookies, or rocking the little baby to sleep, Big Mama looks down and says, "Better straighten up down there." And every so often, Big Mama looks down on this nice little world she made and nods and smiles and says, "That's good. That's real good." Thus ends our story.
Our religious education groups will be celebrating the spring equinox. The children will make seed mosaics and seed bombs to plant. In April, we will start WizCore, which is a role play curriculum created and facilitated by Amelia Kinnan for our oldest group at Northwest. Now, our youth will take their own chalice lit from the flame from our sanctuary and join their groups. Let us join in singing the children's blessing. You are invited to rise as our youth and their teachers leave the sanctuary.
Mind open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice. As you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
One purpose of a religious community is to encourage all who gather together to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will mutually support this self-supporting congregation and the shared plate recipient. Every other month throughout the year, Northwest shares 50% of the plate collections with the Southfield Emergency Needs Fund. Their goal is to help residents overcome personal hurdles to achieve a satisfying and productive quality of life. Human Services is a division of Southfield Community Relations. You can do so in a variety of ways that are now visible on your screen. For those here in person, we will pass a collection basket for checks and cash.
I understand that Northwest, like many UU congregations, is considering how best to do joys and sorrows, particularly now after a pandemic when we're multi-platform. There will be a community conversation about this subject on March 28th, and if you have something you feel you pressingly need to speak to this community before then, please do email Reverend Julie. For anyone seeking pastoral care, please reach out to your Minister of Pastoral Care, the Reverend Teresa Rolk, in the weekly drop-in Zoom room or one-on-one appointments by emailing pastoralcare@northwestuu.org. That's all one word, pastoral care @northwestuu, all one word, .com. For now, I will light a candle for all the joys and sorrows of the community. Know that we hold you with us. And now we have some words for your prayer or meditation.
Today's reading is Goddess by the Reverend Misha Sanders. In a sacred place of honor, in the temple that is my home, stands a gleaming, powerful image of the Venus of Wallendorf. Proud and naked, her unbound breasts resting on her full, rotund belly, blissful and heavy, with the ripeness of all life and the sweet milk that sustains it, having no apologies to make for the fat fullness of her thighs, grown strong and proud from the carrying of this wide expanse of hips, and a rump the roundness of which has enchanted poets and priests since before time. The wise goddess child who is my daughter calls this image the mommy doll. She has no interest in the notion that maybe this lush feminine form was not fashioned to look like me. How then can I face this child and not stand tall and be a goddess? And in whatever size I am, be content. I do not need minimizing panels in my panties and wires in my bra to be divine and full of beauty. Full of beauty. Not starving for affection, approval, appreciation, confirmation, conformity, or anonymity, but fully at home in the body of this woman who takes up her share of space without saying, I am sorry, and still leaves room enough in the world for you. So to you and to me and to the wise goddess child who is my daughter, I say, fearlessly and wondrously are we made in the image of she who is most holy. And the blasphemy of the body hatred has no place in this temple. Maybe take a few moments of silence to be with each other in this sacred space. We will come out singing.
Spirit of light, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of love, come to me, come to me.
Our reading today is an excerpt from a book called Fat Church by Anastasia Kidd, who's a UCC minister. She writes, and before I read this, I'm going to say that whenever she uses the word obesity, she puts an asterisk in it to indicate that this word is not a word that we use in the fat liberation community. But I don't know how to read OB*SITY, so I'm just going to say obesity, but I want you to hear it with the asterisk, okay? Whenever fat activists speak up, we're often ridiculed for glorifying obesity. By this phrase, people mean that fat activists are lifting up fatness as good when it is so clearly bad, vile, embarrassing. Insert additional vitriol here. To glorify obesity is laughable, maddening, or even dangerous to those who understand fatness the way our prevalent American culture invites us to. But now that we've spent some time looking at the paper tiger that is the obesity epidemic, which she does in the earlier parts of her book. So yes, I'm glorifying obesity, guilty as charged. It's time to glorify obesity because bodies like mine should be deemed holy. I've never been able to reconcile my supposed badness as a fat person with the goodness of my self-understanding as a child of God. I have always believed in my own fearfully and wonderfully madness as much as anyone else's. And that necessarily means all of me, even the fleshy wings of my arms, my soft belly, and my ample, dimpled backside. And as a Christian minister in the Progressive United Church of Christ tradition, how can I preach the unconditional love of God, the radical hospitality of Jesus, and the movement of the Holy Spirit in all flesh, but not include my own fat body? I can readily, through my preaching and activism, challenge the status quo marginalization of people by racism, patriarchy, ableism, and homophobia, but never question whether their corollary sizeism and healthism are similar marginalization at work in the anti-fat hatred that society spews every day. If fat people are holy, really holy, every chin roll and jiggle, what would that mean? What would it mean to truly see fat bodies as venerable, worthy bodies just as they are? Bodies in which the sacred resides not as an afterthought, but because fat is equally valid imago Dei. What would it be like to imagine God enrobed in mounds of sacred, fleshy goodness? Thus ends the reading.
Now we are going to sing a chant, Loosen, Loosen, and please join us in chanting and singing with us, Julie, Sid, Adarsha, and Taris, and me.
There's a little story that goes with this one. I was speaking with Reverend Julie, and she had asked, could I help with the music on a Sunday? And I said, well, I'm a little more drawn towards singing chanting songs. And she said, oh, do you know this song, Loosen, Loosen? And she broke out into song, and we both sang it together. So I thought it was nice serendipity. So we are going to sing it today. We're going to just do in unison. 4 times through, so feel free to pick it up anytime you'd like to start and join in.
Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name, the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name, the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go.
Thank you, volunteer musicians of Northwest. You are wonderful this morning. I don't know that in 23 years of ministry, I've ever done a worship service where I've had accordion before, and I am loving it. It is a delight to be back here with you today. I've preached here a couple times before, I think for Reverend Kimmy's sabbatical once, and maybe for Reverend Kimmy's sabbatical twice, and then maybe another time. And it's just wonderful to be back here in this space. I've been in ministry for 23 years, and during that time that I was here in Michigan, and for 20 of my years, or 19 of my years at least, it took me that long to preach on fat liberation. Why? Well, because everything I saw in the larger culture said that fat bias was completely okay, and this is not a justice issue. Weight discrimination was legal, still is legal, in 49 states. Do you know where the only state is where it's not legal? Here, Michigan. That's right. This is the one and only state where weight discrimination isn't legal in employment. But fat jokes are prevalent, and everyone pushing back against that jokes is rare, and anyone pushing back against those jokes is rare. People were posting angrily about fat people in airlines and being treated in the media like their outrage that we would dare fly is completely justified. And in my 23 years of ministry, very little of that has changed. A movie called The Whale that people had named the fat phobia in was awarded Best Actor like last year. We make fat people buy 2 airplane seats on almost every airline except Southwest. We charge fat people more for clothing, and we don't carry their sizes in almost all in-person stores and most online stores. For my preaching robe, which I'm not even wearing today, I paid an extra $80 over what people in smaller sizes pay from a woman-friendly robe company. We're fine with restaurants having booths that fat people cannot enter and chairs with arms likewise. And then there's healthcare. A lot of fat people have historically been banned from healthcare when you could ban people with pre-existing conditions, which was the case when I started ministry, because fat, which wasn't yet considered a disease, was considered a pre-existing condition. Go figure. And that's one thing that's not true now, but it's still true that fat people avoid going to the doctor because of the fat bias in the medical industry. And then there's the biggest problem of bias in healthcare, that amounts to every diagnosis being boiled down to the cause is you're fat, and the cure is don't be fat. We don't really get other real healthcare in many instances. That's our culture, and it has been my whole life. And what was true in the larger culture was also true in Unitarian Universalism for most of my career. Our faith in our churches and in our overall association and in our ministry told me it is not okay to be fat. In every church I served, there were definite, concrete instances of fat phobia, and there definitely were in the search process. It all started for me really when I went and saw the ministerial fellowship committee where you get credentialed to be a minister, and I had a professor look over my packet and tell me what to expect. One of the things he said that they'll ask you is something about weight and health. And so they did, and that was the start. Saying that this was a bias and wrong to the ministerial fellowship committee did not seem like an option. The response in all of culture was always, well, we are just worried about your health. And I rarely heard of any ministers preaching on fat bias or weight discrimination. In fact, the first person I heard who ever said that they had preached a sermon on it was the Reverend Kimmy Regal. The UUA had no programs beyond a couple of questions and an optional piece in their Beyond Categorical Thinking program that addressed fat bias. The UU World had never done an article on it. I think still never has. Searching for the word fat 10 years ago in the UUA's webpage, and fat and other synonyms only yielded a couple of results to a couple of think pieces on the UUA's website. The UUA General Assembly, until a few years ago, had never had any program on weight discrimination and rejected my first proposal for one. We passed 0 actions of immediate witness and 0 study action issues or other resolutions at the General Assembly on this issue. The one statement of conscience that mentioned was the ethical eating statement of conscience, and it basically argued that fat was unethical in this document. And all of that was the case until about 2021, when things started to shift slowly. So the message to me was loud and clear. We are not ready in Unitarian Universalism to embrace this as a social justice issue, so just be quiet. And the responses to a couple of blog posts I wrote about the issue confirmed this. I knew that if I was going to bring this to the forefront in the UUA, it was going to take a lot of work and a lot of energy, and I was going to get a lot of pushback and a lot of resistance, even to the point where it might be career damaging. And so I didn't. I stayed silent for 20 years. Now, most of that is still true in Unitarian Universalism, but things are now slowly starting to change. A handful of years ago, the UU Ministers Association helped us create an identity and caucus group within the ministry. And out of that, we created a Facebook group, and that's been amazing because for the first time in the last 4 years or so, fat ministers are openly talking with each other about how this discrimination affects our ministry. And fat UUs are talking with each other in another Facebook group of all stripes, ministry and lay and other religious professionals, about how this affects their faith and their connection to our faith. And then in 2021, I and 2 other fat ministers, one of whom is the Reverend Julie Brock, we gave the first ever General Assembly workshop on fat liberation. And I gotta say, Julie was really my inspiration in a lot of ways in proposing the first one I proposed. We gave the first ever GA workshop on the subject, even though it was still a virtual workshop because we were all virtual that year. And then my proposal to have the first in-person workshop for last year's GA was rejected again. But meanwhile, the UUA's worship web curator has invited submissions to the Braver Wiser blog at the UUA, and things are moving slowly in our faith since I and a few others started making a little noise. Last year at General Assembly, we held our own gatherings. If we weren't going to be given a workshop slot, we held meetups. And we passed out buttons and magnets and ribbons with fat liberation messages. And then this fall, after that, we got the UUA board to vote and pass a resolution, a statement supporting fat liberation work. And now the UUA is reaching out to me and saying, okay, since we voted on this, we've got to change the UUA. Let us know what you think about how we should do it. And then, a few months ago, I saw something amazing. The Malden, Massachusetts UU Church held what they called a fat liberation clothing swap, where people were invited to come to their church and swap fat clothing. I was astounded. I had never before seen an advertised, fat-focused Unitarian Universalist event before. Hallelujah! And then the greatest news of all happened this spring, that I heard that the UUA is thinking of building on our momentum that we made when we made a fuss last year, building on that momentum and having a key speaker on fat liberation at this year's General Assembly, someone who brings in an intersectional fat liberation lens. But there is still a long way to go. I had someone warn me last spring that my fat liberation work could be career damaging. And I've had and heard of even more fat-phobic incidents in UU churches within the last 2 months than I can name. But the truth is, it's not being fat liberationist, but just being fat that has really been career damaging. And so I am done being silent. Can I have an amen? Thank you. But I've gotten a little ahead of myself now because I think it might still be an open question for many people whether this is a sort of legitimate discrimination or whether it's just the case that there are unhealthy people doing unhealthy things and they should have people pushing back against them for their bad behavior. And that's all well and good. In fact, because that pushback and those limitations, it's all for our own good. And it'll make us change if we're not accommodated or supported. And I do not have time today to thoroughly pull that apart for you. But let me just say, first of all, a lot has been written debunking the false causation myth that's been created between fat and health. A lot of studies don't account for the harm done to our bodies by the cycle of dieting, or the other causes of unhealthiness in fat people, such as the fact that fat people often avoid medical treatment or don't get medical treatment because of the anti-fat bias they experience. Let's not check for cancer because obviously you're fat, so that must be the problem. Similarly, I could talk a lot about how dieting largely does not work, and both the diet and the medical industries know this. The vast, overwhelming majority of diets do not produce lasting, and I mean like years-long lasting change. Weight loss surgery increases mortality rates, not decreases. But I don't want to go into all that, because that's not my point. And if it's something you want to know about, I really recommend the book Fat Church. It's an excellent place to begin. So I'm just going to work from the assumption that we agree that that is not necessarily and always unhealthy, and that dieting is not always a productive path to recommend for most people, and weight loss surgery is more damaging than helpful in a lot of cases. And even if this is wrong, this is what's important here, that's all irrelevant. Because unless you're that fat person's doctor, that's not your concern. You don't need to be expressing your worry for a fat person's health, because doing so is likely done in a fat shaming and not very supportive way, and it's not making a positive difference. And if you are worried for somebody, there's a lot of actually productive things you can do, and I want to get to those. So instead, let's look a little bit where anti-fatness came from. My first instinct was to think that this is rooted in classism. Our negative stereotypes of fatness, such as laziness, slovenliness, are also negatively associated with lower classes quite frequently. Our stereotypes of fat people are often classist in the way we portray them. But anti-fat bias is even more deeply rooted in racism. In her book, Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, author Sabrina Strings lays out the connection between anti-fatness and racism, saying, two critical historical developments have contributed to a fetish for svelteness and a phobia about fatness: the rise of the transatlantic slave trade and the spread of Protestantism. Racial scientific rhetoric about slavery linked fatness to greedy Africans, and religious discourse suggested that overeating was ungodly. As we're a religious organization, I think let's look at those religious roots of anti-fatness a little more. Let me talk about the religious. In the Calvinist puritanical church, only the elect were destined for heaven, and this was predetermined. And one had to prove to the people, to both the church and the community at large, that one was part of the elect through looking good and being good. And thus, you would be considered part of the elect, and you would be cared about. You'd be welcomed into the church community, and you would be saved. So, our church's very membership was reserved for those who could prove their worthiness. And this lives on in America, in our healthism, where we judge illness, and then we decide whether that person is guilty and thus should be ignored or even scorned, or whether that person is innocent, and then react to their situation by giving societal support, research dollars, and generally our sympathy and understanding to the innocent. One example is cancer. Our sympathies are with breast cancer. It's an innocent cancer. People didn't do anything to get breast cancer. And so we judge that people did not bring that on themselves. And we give them research dollars and a whole month dedicated to Breast Cancer Awareness Month with pink ribbons everywhere and pink ribbon bagels at Panera. Then we have people with lung cancer, which we deem a guilty cancer because we think that most people brought that on themselves through smoking, which is a sin. And so we don't support them, and we don't have Lung Cancer Awareness Month or whatever color lung cancer awareness has in bagels at Panera. So I just say Panera because I really like those pink bagels. I think they're really good, but I'd like to have bagels for all sorts of things. We're outraged about bias against people for things that we think are outside of their control, immutable characteristics, but things that are inside people's control, we will judge, and we believe they shall change. That's how our society was set up from our Puritan ancestors. So think about the analogy of gay rights, too. In the first period of gay rights support, we were trying to make the societal case that anti-gayness was wrong for one basic reason. They didn't choose it. They were born that way. And so that was the movement we had, Born This Way songs, Born This Way campaigns, because we wanted to say LGBT people should not be discriminated against. Well, what's wrong with that situation? What's wrong is that they shouldn't be discriminated against, period. Whether or not they chose it or they were born that way, it's wrong to discriminate. It's wrong to treat people that way. So it's good that over time in our society, we shifted away from that mantra and that explanation about gay rights to a just global understanding that gay people are holy and whole, justified in loving who they love, and welcome in our society and in our churches. The root cause is irrelevant because the range of sexuality and gender orientations are not just okay, right? They're not just okay, they're fabulous, and they're welcomed here, right? Another amen? Amen. So fat, we argue, is about people's sin, the sin of gluttony. And although our culture doesn't use the word sin all the time, instead we talk about health because we're talking about healthism, which we've replaced the sin in theological language with, but it's the same age-old question. We need to judge you before deciding if bias against you is wrong. And culturally, fat people are judged to have chosen this because the choice is calories in, calories out, not genetics or family environment or metabolism issues or any of the myriad of other issues that are simply just not about choice. And so we believe fat people should simply diet, not questioning that diets don't actually work for them long term, for the vast majority of fat people. And once we've made this decision, that it's a choice, we don't need to do the work of demanding justice, but just demand that fat people change. And so we can live with the fact that things are not fair and not equal for fat people because they chose something that was wrong. And the first part of breaking this down is to break down the assumptions and myths about fatness, break down the assumption that this is about choice, and thereby move fat people into the elect. But I think that is just bad theology. Like we did with gay people, we need to say it's not a question of whether it's a choice or not. It doesn't matter. Discrimination is wrong. If you choose your sexuality or your gender, that is fine. You are loved and whole and holy, loved and beloved child of the universe, child of God, regardless of the choice of birth. You don't deserve discrimination. And if you are still discriminated against, I will fight for you. Oppression leads to negative health outcomes. Shaming is not good for mental illness. And here it is, the number one thing any of us can do if we're worried about the health of fat people is to advocate for justice for them and to tell them that they are fabulous and loved and a child of God or the universe, however your theology works it. Worried about the health of a fat person you love? Advocate for justice for them. Tell them that they are awesome. And this is what I want for fat people. I want us to stop looking at discrimination and saying, but this is something that's unhealthy and they need to make better choices. And start looking at discrimination saying, my God, from the bottom of my heart and the depths of my faith as a Unitarian Universalist, I see this as discrimination and I know this is wrong. And then I want us as a faith to do better and work against this injustice. So usually when I start a sermon on social justice and I build up to a call for action, I tell you about the positive stances the UUA has taken, the resolutions that the General Assembly has voted on, the suggestions that we find in UU curricula and social justice programs and more, and how to advocate from this issue, and then I go from there. But as I said from the start, we have few instances of that in our faith, although things are beginning, starting with the UUA board statement. So if you want to do something, it requires you to take almost unprecedented action. You could still be the first congregation I've heard of with its own fat justice group, the first congregation fighting actively in your communities for local fat justice, the first congregation to propose passing something about fat liberation as a study action issue or a statement of conscience or action of immediate witness at our denomination's General Assembly. You could still be the first congregation to proclaim yourselves to be the fat equivalent of a welcoming congregation or a green sanctuary. Or you could be the second congregation to host a fat liberation clothing swap. That's not as big an ask. It's why, but it is a big ask to do any of these things. And that's why it took me 20 years to start asking for it. But now that I'm taking this message everywhere I can, and thank you for letting me bring it back to my home state of Michigan, the one and only state that prohibits discrimination in the whole United States of America. Let it maybe be here that we lead from. But here's what I'll leave you with, and it just takes heart and a start. And your fat members, and maybe your fat minister too, will be so grateful. And the fat community members around you, they will hear you and they will see you and they will see that you saw this need for justice. We've been ignored for so long that that's really all we want now, is to be seen and to know that this is justice too. And to have our liberatory and welcoming faith applied to our whole selves, including our bodies. That is all. May it be so. By Fred Rogers. I can't wait.
So this is a song, It's You I Like. Obviously Fred Rogers is one of the people who talks about not discriminating against anyone and to really accept and love all people. So if you know it, please sing along. It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair, but it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep your stuff. It's just beside you. But it's you I like. It's every part of you. Your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you will remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like, it's you yourself, it's you. It's you I like. I'd like you to either, you can say it quietly into the air, or you can think it in your head, something that you like about yourself. That doesn't include anything physical, just something that you really, an attribute about yourself that you like. You go ahead and say it into the air or in your head, and we're going to sing this one more time. It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair, but it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep inside you. It's not the things that hide you, it's not your stuff, it's just beside you. But it's you I like, it's every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that we'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like, it's you yourself, it's you. It's you I like.
Thank you. Now it's time to extinguish our flame. Please repeat after me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of hope. The warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Carry in our hearts until we are together. Amazing Northwest community that I have long known when I was a minister in the state as a home for justice, a cradle from which justice sprang out throughout our state. May you go in peace, taking your faith from this place out into the wider world until you are back here together again. Go in peace, go in love, go in justice. Amen.
Do I hear it? Yeah, I guess it's coming through. Good.
Okay, we're gonna send you off with a nice Irish happy song.
One of the good things about UU is its inclusivity, and this is a song that celebrates inclusivity. It's all called All God's Creatures Got a Place in the Choir. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing out on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or pause or anything at all.
Listen to the top where the little birds sing in the melodies and the high notes ringing and hoot owl cries over everything and the blackbird disagrees.
Well, singing in the nighttime, singing in the day. Little duck's quack, and he's on his way. And the otter hasn't got much to say. And the porcupine talks to himself, of course. Yes, so all God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing out on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything at all. It's you.
The dogs and the cats, they take up the middle where the honeybees hum and the crickets fiddle. The donkeys bray and the ponies neigh and the old gray badger sighs.
Well, listen to the bass, it's a one on the bottom. Bullfrog croaks and the hippopotamus moans and grows with a big to-do, and the old cow just goes moo. So it's a simple little song sung everywhere, where the box and the cox and the grizzly bear, the dopey alligator and the hawk above, the sly old weasel and the turtle dove. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing out on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything at all. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing out on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything at all. Yes, some got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing out on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything at all. Thank you.